Hello, everyone. This is Kelly Beard of KarmicTools.com, and we are gathered for part 2 of a 3-part introduction to some of my new work, which is not actually astrologically based. So I'm really grateful that you all are willing to expand and go in some other directions with me. But for now, let's just get anchored where we are, let go of the day, of the week, of the month. Let's do a couple of deep breaths, just to get present, to feel into our own bodies and spirits here, and we will unify the circle this way. I invite our benevolent angels and loving ancestors and personal animal guides and helping spirits to be with us tonight. We each have a powerful, invisible team of support. I want you all to always know that. It's even more potent when we bring them together like this for a common purpose. So think of my team and your team and your team and your team and your team, and we've got at least 100 people registered for this, so that is quite a team of invisible support surrounding us at all times, basically, but certainly when we call it in like now. So take a deep cleansing breath in and just welcome that kind of support and open your heart to receive messages that are just for you tonight. Deep breath in. And hold and release. We honor the direction of the north as a conception point where we access the inner wisdom of the body and the element of earth to anchor us in the actual here and now. Deep breath in. Connecting to the north, the element of earth, your root chakra, and release. We turn to honor the direction of the east as an initiation point where we access the inner wisdom of the mind and the element of air to illuminate the truth of here and now. So we make that connection to our mental body, the element of air, which is related to our heart chakra. Feel that expansion and take a deep cleansing breath in, opening your heart to receive. Deep breath. And hold and release. We turn to honor the direction of the south, a culmination point where we access the inner wisdom of the spirit and the element of fire to inspire the creativity of here and now. Let's make that connection to the element of fire, which is related to your solar plexus. Just open up, loosen up, take a deep cleansing breath in, right there. Deep breath. And hold and release. And we turn to honor the direction of the west as a completion point and where we access the inner wisdom of the soul, as well as the element of water, which allows us to surrender to here and now. So let's connect to that element of water, which is related to your sacral, your creative chakra, and take a deep cleansing breath in right there. Deep breath. And hold and release. Okay. Welcome, welcome, everyone. I'm so grateful for everyone that is here with us physically and with us in spirit. I know many of you will be getting the recording later, so I just want to say another thank you because this is so exciting. I'm so excited to have a new direction and new offerings and new people to play with and all kinds of goodies to share. And so I do have some new registrants for this call that maybe have not had a chance to listen to the Archetypes call. And if you missed that or didn't receive that, there was some weirdness when it went out, but it eventually, I think, got to everybody. But if you missed it, there's quite an introduction and on that within the first 30 minutes. So I'm going to encourage you to re-listen to that. I'm going to do a brief little quickie overview here, but nothing nearly as in-depth as I did on the first call, and so I do recommend you get to that when you can. But how I got here and who I am and how this all came about, including our stars of the show tonight are the animal guides. I'm going to go way into that and encourage you to think of all the times that animals have supported you in your life, and hopefully a couple of you will share a story or two a little bit later. But my whole thing, you may have noticed, is the self-healing and the ongoing education and the transformational soul work. And most of that has come about because I've had to do it myself all along. And I've created some tools, and I've discovered some tools, and I've learned from other teachers, and I love sharing what I gather along the way, just so that you never know. You never know when that message is going to come through that's just for you. So what I've realized along the way was that it wasn't easy for me in the beginning to figure out my challenges and what the healing protocols would actually be. It was hard because we come from certain conditionings and backgrounds and circumstances within our environment that make things really hard. And in one sense, it was challenging. I was on my own a lot, and I was what was called unsupervised, which is pretty funny to me now. But I remember being a little girl, and I asked if a friend could spend the night, and her mother said no because I was unsupervised. And I didn't understand what that meant at the time. But I knew instinctively it wasn't a good thing at that time. But for me, it actually was a good thing. Because on the one hand, being unsupervised can be dangerous, and I wouldn't do it with my own child, but it was a different time. The 60s and 70s was a different time for parenting. But I never had anyone to tell me I couldn't do something. I didn't have anyone telling me I could, but I didn't have anyone telling me I couldn't. So my imagination was quite active, and I worked with what I had around me, which often would be my angels and ancestors and spirit guides that I loved to talk to from day one. And then certainly my familiars and the animals that came along were tremendous support, and that's where I found a lot of my healing was in nature. But again, with the imagination and never being blocked in that way. So I have been blessed to heal through some things, partially because I didn't know what could go wrong. I didn't know how hard it could be or how hard it was for a lot of people. So I was able to do a lot at a very young age. I did a lot of traveling. So that education, that self-education and ongoing education, I love learning. And I think I did say that on the first call. The archetypes that I identify with most would be the scholar and the shaman, because I love to learn the science behind the mysticism, and I love the mysticism, and I love finding out there's science to prove it. I mean, I really resonate with both sides of that, and I can surrender to the mystical side a lot easier, but the scholarly side loves to, let's say, have fun educational discussions, and lively discussions, which is what I would like to encourage us to do along the way throughout the year as we get together. But developing your own philosophy and your own consciousness, expanding that awareness. And I was a voracious reader. I could read a book in a day. I loved reading. I loved learning. I loved exploring. I loved trying things. And that was the other thing about therapy or talk therapy or any kind of psychologist or psychiatrist. That just wasn't my thing. I didn't want to talk about my problems. I wanted to do something about them. And so a lot of the things that I've created are tools that helped me do the work myself, or ask myself the questions, or ask my angels, ancestors, and animal spirit guides the questions. And lo and behold, we get our answers one way or another if you're paying attention. And just asking the question invites the answer. So it opens up the communication, and that's why we always say help has to be invited. And even with our invisible team, they're not going to even come unless they're invited. So I remind you here that it always has to be an invitation. You always have free will and choice. So even if you are, say, for example, in a journey asking for medicine from a particular animal that comes through a little too strongly, and it's overwhelming and you can feel it and it's a little too much for your system, you always have the power and control to just simply either put your hand up in front of you, like stop in that sort of gesture, or give me this 5-foot radius around me as a little comfort zone. If it's too much, you can say, I'm not ready for this intensely at this time. Can we please dial it down to something I can handle? And you have that control. And the other thing about talking to our invisible team of support is you can open that dialogue, but I have personally learned over the years that you need to close the conversations as well. Okay, thank you, make an offering. I'm so grateful for our communication tonight, but I am closing this portal. I'm closing the door on this conversation, on this conference room, and I'm leaving, and I'm going to be at peace when I go. And that came about because once I opened it up, I wasn't sleeping because they never shut up. And you have to know that they're eager to help and they're eager to support you. And this is the way that someone like me as a young child that felt very alone in the world did not feel alone anymore. And so this is one of the biggest blessings of tuning into any kind of invisible support team that you can imagine, that you can sense around you, or that you believe and understand to be of support to you, is that you're never, ever alone if you don't want to be. And there's intentional solitude. There's a time to go within, and there's a time to be alone that's really healthy and worthwhile. And I highly encourage you to develop that and put that on the calendar, because we won't get it unless we take it these days. Remember, everything is kind of 24/7, 365 now. So if you need space to process or to integrate certain things that are happening with you, you might want to start kind of planning it and putting it on the calendar, even if you just say appointment with self, appointment with my guides, appointment with wolf. I know a lot of you are wolves too, since I'm a big wolf totem person. So I trust that many of my pack have shown up for this, tonight especially. And, you know, as we go along learning, trying to figure out how to take care of ourselves and be there for ourselves and get the education and the learning that we need to be better people and go along, you know, the soul work starts to kick in, and you start to realize that there are deeper and deeper levels and deeper layers to our psyche, to our soul work, to our consciousness, and how once you know something, you can't unknow what you know. So once you're awakened, it's really challenging to go back to sleep. At the same time, if you've been awakened by a crisis, if you've been jolted awake, that's a different thing. That means you weren't waking up consciously and of your own volition, and so sometimes we can fall back asleep. So, you know, the only caveat with that would be that side of things. If you have woken up suddenly from something that's giving you another chance, then you might want to honor it by not falling back asleep or falling back into old patterns. And that's probably the biggest thing I want you to know about me is how I am a tracker. And so a lot of people come to me and they've never thought about tracking their cycles and patterns the way that I present it. And so I do encourage you to think about, there's all kinds of cycles and patterns you could tune into. It just depends on your own life and your own rhythm and your own speed, I think, for how you live your life. Because some people pretty much speed through life and some people are moseying. And it's all good. Either way is fine. But accommodate your nature. Don't make your nature wrong, but figure out ways to make it work for you. You know, that's my thing. And so the tracker in me is what I usually tell my clients and students is that I'm here to pretty much help you with that. So you don't necessarily have to be a tracker or become a tracker, but it helps to not repeat mistakes. You know, that was how I got started with it, was that I didn't want to repeat some of the really big mistakes I made in my youth ever again, let alone over and over. And so I started paying attention, and I'm a 3-strike girl. I don't know how you guys do it, but once something has happened 3 times over, you know, the Trinity energy is a very powerful, creative, mystical number and way of walking through the world. And it could be 3 confirmations of anything, good, bad, or indifferent. But once something has happened 3 times, to me, it's a pattern. And I'll give you an example. For a long time, I was in charge of the bills and the money and the banking, and so I would allot my husband the grocery money. When I started, like I said, I found it 3 times. It happened 3 times over before I said this is a pattern, where he got really agitated, weird, and anxious, and had this underlying anxiety if I put a limit on the grocery bill. Like if I said you could only spend $100. And once I realized it was an issue, he's a Taurus. Taurus sometimes has past lives of famine, and it can come up. And this is a child who has had 3 square meals a day. Parents still live in the same house he grew up in. I mean, very stable background. He has never missed a meal. So that famine and this weird anxiety around food is just really, really something that he literally came in with as a baby. His mother tells stories about how he had to eat twice as much as what the doctors were saying she should do. And she had to follow the child, you know, which is what we did. So it was really interesting. Once I realized it was a pattern, I said, you know what? You can spend whatever you want on groceries. I will work the bills out another way. And he calmed down, and everything was fine. As long as I didn't limit it, he was okay. So there's things that you can pick up on that can make life easier, especially in a marriage like that. We could have thought about that. We could have had issues behind that, but we didn't because I saw a pattern. And that goes for internally, externally, with your partners, with your friends, with your family. I will kind of interject here. Our blood family is for our lessons and our karma and some of the things we're working out, whereas our friends and our communities are our chosen family. They're the ones sent by the angels and the ancestors to really, truly support us by our own definition of support. So it's important to pay just a little bit of attention. I don't want to put pressure on those of you who like to fly by the seat of your pants and are, moving through the world, just accepting things as they come. But for my planners and my goal people and the ones with really high aspirations and big dreams, it's good to track a little bit. And so we have learned through astrology and all the work I've done previous to now how to track according to our charts. But now I'm going to ask you, especially for tonight, to just think about the support you've gotten from nature in general and animals specifically, and to sort of open up right there to know that one of the things about tracking a pattern, at least these days, I would recommend as well, is a minimum of 90 days. So I will say here on the early part of the audio about the new offering is a monthly circle. The Soul Sister Circle is each month we're working on a different thing, so it doesn't matter when you join or how long you stay. It's all up to you. But it is good to work it a whole solid year because we do a little bit of everything. And like I said in the note, if you tend to your own personal work a little bit every month, by the end of the year, you're so much stronger. And everything is so much easier to move into the new because you're not cleaning up or tying up loose ends or doing anything that is really looking backwards at that point because the year is done. So we want to take a little bit every month, take a little time out. I don't think that's too much to ask, 1 hour a month, to check in and do some tending to our personal thing. So like last month was independence, this month is self-worth, next month is communication. They're all what we all share. We all have to deal with our self-worth and self-value issues, which is going to be part of our theme tonight. And we all have to deal with communication, and we have to deal with changing values and priorities and changing relationships and jobs and homes and spaces and all of that. And so, again, if we can do a little bit of tending each month, then the year as a whole makes you stronger, and it's a really powerful thing to co-create with, essentially. So for our animals, we want to remember they have to live here on Earth just like we do. They have all the same physical things that we have to go through. They have to eat. They have to release waste. They have to find shelter. Most of them are communal and have families. Even the lone wolves and solitary animals go out on their own. They come back together to mate, very much like buffalo does. And they don't create the drama and the chaos and the weirdness that humans create. So this is why it's important to me that we cultivate relationships with the animals or the spirit of an animal. Just getting to know it can help you navigate through life a little bit easier. Watching for signals from the animals around you, whether you're in the middle of a city with just squirrels and birds, that's okay. They're messengers too. I had lots of cats and dogs in D.C. growing up, and wild, like just loose in the street. So there's animals around us everywhere, and we can always invite them to give us messages. Now, at the same time, it's one thing to have kind of a fleeting, cursory, superficial idea and concept of animal guides, but then there's something else to cultivate a relationship. So we're encouraged, if you are in a place or can get to a nature spot that you can go to that is the same place, even if it was possible for you to get there at the same time for a certain length of time as a conscious dedication to meeting up with either your spirit animal or a local animal that's there that you may want to commune with. Again, it's just a little practice that helps prime the pump of cultivating relationship because we can learn if we're paying attention. If we're looking for that opportunity to glean a little bit of insight into what's going on with us. For example, outside my house, now they've cut down the trees, don't even get me started, but there were woodpeckers that lived there that I loved, and every so often they would go nuts. And it was always, if you know anything about woodpecker medicine, is about having to dig for those really good ideas, but they're there, and these opportunities, they're there, but you have to dig for them, and you have to work for them. It was an amazing time where they came around only at these certain times. Otherwise, if I went looking for them, I couldn't find them. It was really interesting. And so looking around of what's close by and noticing how there's no self-pity with the animals. They never feel sorry for themselves. They never wallow in whatever's going wrong. Oh, the one time I lived in a house in my whole life, we chose the house because it was surrounded by trees, and then they bulldozed all the trees, built 2 houses that sat empty for 2 years, and this is just typical of crazy America. But what I saw was all the animals that they displaced, and the birds were actually chasing the tractors. They were chasing them and cussing them out in their own way. I know they were, because their heads were going crazy, and they were flapping, and they were like, what are you doing to our home? It was so horrific. And it is actually when I gave up Christmas trees, because I couldn't get myself to wrap my brain around cutting down a tree for 2 weeks of fun or a month of, beauty and good smells and what have you. So I went through my little phase with that as well. But the trees, I can't abide by cutting down trees unnecessarily that are healthy. And we've had some of that lately. So I've had to make some offerings and do some prayer work around that to be okay. But you can cultivate these connections, let's say. And then, again, when you ask the question, inviting the answer, if you pose something to the universe that you need some guidance and help on, and which animal or bird or creature is going to be most useful, and then just look what crosses your path in the next week or two. You can really make that connection, and you can start to make it stronger is also the key, because then it's kind of second nature, and you can go into meditation or journey like we're going to do in a little bit, and go in with a specific question. And so they are just amazing spirit helpers. Every animal offers a special message, gift, or warning. They all have a light and shadow side. We're going to talk about buffalo a little bit too. You can, again, glean those messages just by observing their behavior. And then if they're wild animals or really out of your reach, they're in other countries, you can look them up, do some research. If you have a dream about a certain animal, or if someone mentions it, or you just see the word, look it up. And look up how they live and how they get their food and how they do their shelter and how they migrate or if they migrate and that kind of thing. And you start to pick up all this little information that is so useful to us humans if we would just remember and pay attention a little bit. And they each have their own cycles that are all synced with nature's rhythm. Every animal I've ever heard of births at the time where they're either safest to be unmolested so that they can grow in peace to their, maybe 3 months or 1 year old size that they need to be to function in the wild, or they have their own cycles. And some do it for the food that's around at that time. Their bodies, everything is in sync with nature. So that's what we want to do, is my point, is sync up with nature in any way you can, even if you feel like you're backwards and not in the normal rhythm that everybody else is in. That's okay. I would turn you back to the astrology to validate that, because whatever your rising sign is another way to look at an annual clock for yourself. So if you know your rising is Leo, then the beginning of your clock is in July, August sometime. So whenever that sign is really the beginning of your year. So mine is Sagittarius, and I think I did mention this last time. I finally, now that I have empty nest, have been able to start my life on the 1st of December, which was never possible because of the holidays and everything else. So knowing your own natural rhythm, knowing that winter, spring, summer, fall, and how they all affect you. Tuning in, if you can, if you're really sensitive and open and receptive, you can tune into the gates of power. They're extremely powerful to start to understand the rhythm of. But this is something else we can learn from the animals. They sync up in a way that is not pushing the river. It doesn't stretch their resources. It doesn't overextend them in any way. They take the path of least resistance. And humans just seem to complicate everything. And we make so many things harder than they have to be. And I would just love for you all to have some kind of catch system or a way to catch yourself in the moment to self-correct. Because, again, we cannot rely on our spouses or our friends or our family to always be able to do that for us if they can ever do it. This is really something I want you to be able to do for yourself. And familiars in particular, any animals that you have pets and have helped or healed, whether they're, outdoor pets or indoor pets, they are your familiars. And often I have heard many, many stories of how they help us heal even when we have physical ailments. Sometimes these animals can take on certain things that make our journey a little bit easier. And so we really want to thank those animal helpers and those helping spirits because they take on some of the harder stuff that we can't even process. It's important to also pay attention to the familiars that show up, let's say, when loved ones become ancestors, when our people pass away and they become an angel or an ancestor. That's when sometimes a familiar will come. So I feel like my first cat that I had for 20 years, it was really literally the North Node cycle, 19 years and change, that came to me when my mother passed. I was in Brooklyn, New York, in my Toyota 4Runner at a comedy club, and I came out to my car after the club, and this little kitten was under my car, but she was all alone. I couldn't find any mom or family around the car anywhere. So we get in the car, and I had a couple of girls and a couple of guys with me. We had a whole full truck. I went to hand the kitty back to my girlfriend, and she went ballistic and, bounced off the walls and went crazy, scratching everything, came flying back up to the front seat, curled up on my lap, and was like, we going with you. So it was so obvious, and she was with me for 19 years. I have another cat story. So then when I got the house, the neighbors told me that I had this sphinx sitting just like the sphinx with the little paws over. There was this little nook above the front door that was probably previously screened in, but it wasn't screened in. It was just like a little level place where she could sit. She could just I don't know how she climbed. I think she climbed from a tree and then jumped to the roof and got there that way. But she sat with these little feet over, so I always say she came with the house. And she was all around, and she was a wild feral cat, which is very different from my first kitty, Peaches. Peaches was a lady, as my husband would say. And she was also a Capricorn, so she was very dignified. This one was a wild Leo. And so she was crazy. But I told her I do not do indoor-outdoor. One time she got bit by a snake, and I brought her in to heal her, and that's when I told her. When I put her back out, I was like, you know what, I don't do indoor-outdoor, so you can stay outside or you can come inside, but you can't do both. And she broke in 3 times over, and I had to fix the screen 3 times over. She never broke out. That wasn't the screen bothering her. She was really telling me, I want to be an indoor cat now. Now, that didn't mean she was happy because she was feral. So she was a little wild and crazy and hard to handle indoors. But she never ran away, and she never ran back out. So she was with me for 11 years. And both of them are ancestors now, and both of them come to me in really amazing, miraculous ways. So I'm sure some of you have dogs or cats or other pets that have been like that with you, that they come to you. Certainly the wild animals have to come to you. And I'm always curious about those stories because it happens to me so often. I live in Florida. I have learned all about the swamp animals, which is really interesting. But I can be in the wild, and they just approach me directly, and I almost always have a communion that happens that is really amazing for everyone involved, I think. I don't know if any of you saw, I think it was January when I shared the blue heron video, and I just used it because this blue heron sat with me for 90 minutes, and we were communing, and every time we had a really brilliant exchange, another human would walk by and go, he really likes you, doesn't he? And they were just really annoying. They had no idea what I was really doing. But you know how people walk on the beach, and so they're walking their little mile this way, but they inevitably come back. And so many had walked back and forth and seen this bird with me for almost 2 hours straight. So that was a really fun video to share with you guys, and I hope to have more of those where I have some turtles I want to go film, and there's some different animals that I see all the time. There's some rabbits, lots of snakes, because here we are in Swamp, USA. But oh, I have to tell you the snake story, too. So the best story, this is one of the best. The snake that I saw, now you all have to, I know that I have many artists on here. So anyone who's a visual artist, painter, if you can draw, I want to see a picture of this. So picture the October super full moon, and it was orange, and it was 5:30 in the morning, so it was setting in the west, and it was over the water that was black and like glass, perfectly still. So there's the reflection of the orange moon in the black water, and I was out camping, and it was, let's say, about 20 feet of seagrass between the shore and where the drop-off would be, where we took our kayaks out. We had to push past that seagrass to get out there to go kayaking on the water. And this is Tampa Bay, or the Gulf Coast of Florida. Like I said, I was up all night watching the moon and the stars and communing with everybody. And all of a sudden, I'm in the hammock, and I hear this noise. And it's like running water or a wave. And remember now, the water was pure glass. And I look over, and if I'm lying, I'm flying. So I measured it the next day. I walked it, and I saw what appeared to be a 50-foot snake that was about 3 feet thick, like gigantic anaconda-sized snake, which they don't have in Florida. I looked it up. The biggest python they've measured was 35 feet. So I don't know, but she was going up the shore, and she was moving so slow I could see the front, the back, and the whole movement. And the sound I was hearing was her body over the seagrass and the water over her back. She was going all along the shore right there. It was so amazing. And it was my anniversary. It was a Scorpio, new moon, Taurus, full moon in October. And it was just so many confirmations that night. But the biggest snake I've ever seen in my whole entire life. And I got to tell you, my husband was in the tent asleep, and he thanked me the next day for not waking him up to show him. But that, and I have one more, the owl. So there was a confirmation about my work, which I get a lot from the creatures. It was a little baby owl branching, which means when they hop on the branch when they're just learning to fly. And I was just launching another circle. This might have been the Venus circle back in the day. And I heard the noise, and I look up, and I see the owl, and I get a picture with my little crackberry flip phone, so it's terrible. You can hardly see the owl, but I could see it. And she was so amazing, and it was a message that I had been communing with my grandmother, and when I asked the question, she did a whole figure 8 over my head, 3 times, figure 8, and then flew for like what I thought was the first time, because she just seemed like such a baby, and she was just learning. And it was so powerful and amazing. And owls help us move through grief. They represent so many good things, the wisdom of our grandmothers, the ability to see in the dark, to see behind ourselves what's back there, to understand. All the animals have messages like that we can tune into. And when I looked up the big snake, they said the bigger they are, the more they're female versus male, and they're less aggressive, actually. And all the definitions, of course there were some that were hard and negative, but what I was picking up on was super creativity, and it was totally a time where I was just pouring out. It was unbelievable, and it was all new energy between me and my husband as well. Like I said, we were out there for my anniversary, and it was a powerful weekend the whole time. So animals are always trying to talk to us. Oh, I do have a note here. I wonder if Shanta's with us. I was with Shanta in Mount Shasta a couple of years ago, and we were somewhere, and she was driving her little car, a little Subaru, and there were these donkeys in the path that wouldn't get out of the way. And as we pulled up, and they sort of moseyed out of the way, sort of, kind of, one of them stuck his head in the window, past Shanta, the driver, right to my face like he knew me. It was so crazy. And Shanta was like, "Do you know him?" And I said, "I must, but we got to go. I can't talk to you this way right now." And we will talk another way. But it was powerful, and this is what happens. Sometimes they're trying to get us a message. Sometimes they're really trying to get our attention, and crazy things can happen like that. And so even, like I said, if you don't have access to these animals, you can get pictures online. It's very easy to find pictures of any animal that you would like to commune with if you can't do it in person. Of course, the best is to be able to do it in person if you can. Or if you just have your nature spot, you can be inviting just the nature devas, the little nature spirits. They're like the fairies and gnomes and the earth beings that are part of nature wherever you are. and a lot of my teachers will say, look for what's growing around you. The plant life is alive and talking to us as well. And I'm just starting to learn about this. In fact, I'm about to do a 7 herbs for 7 chakras little garden on my balcony just to try it, to see what happens as I move through this work that I'm launching with you guys and getting into our chakras more. Like next week, we're going to move through each chakra and clear the self-worth issues at each chakra, which is a powerful thing to do. And by the time we get done and we're at the root, we should be grounded in some new space where our self-value and self-worth is concerned. So do some research and invite something before dream time. Ask an animal to come to you in the safest way. Ease and grace is always what we want. Benevolent, loving spirit helpers to know that your surrounding team of invisible support really is the barrier between you and any other energies, entities, or malevolent versus benevolent. Any negative energies are going to have to get through that team first. So that's something that you can always claim as a protection as you're expanding your awareness of how you're not alone, and there's opportunities and there's resources that we don't always consider. And so think of how the animals reflect you, because I remember the wild feral cat, she talked constantly. And so it was just a total sign for Kelly, who I got the gift of gab. So it was really funny, the different things and the different personality traits that came out of each of the animals that really taught us about ourselves. Really cute. So think about that for your familiars or your pets, whoever's around you, closest to you, or even ones you visit. I have fur babies other places that I love, but I'm not responsible for. And reflect on what aspects they bring up for you. And so where is my buffalo? She should be here. Let's talk a little bit about our theme tonight. So first of all, we are still initiating as a spring equinox, which was mid-March, taking us to summer solstice in mid-June. So we're still initiating this year, in a sense. And so I want you to open up to this kind of new beginnings of spring energy that's possible, and know that you're setting the tone for the year, especially if you have new values and priorities. And I did put that in, I think, the access code note. If you have a new identity or a new purpose, a new direction, or a new path that's been emerging over the last year or so, then this is definitely the time to clarify the next step and how to do that. So Buffalo teaches us how to turn our sacrifices into offerings so that they become generative instead of depleting. And so what happens is if we are in a scarcity, lack, and limitation kind of poverty consciousness, then it's really hard to see the opportunities around us or to see the good in something that is challenging us in that moment. But I have found that if I can't see it and I can't figure it out myself, if I just ask, what is this good for? What is the purpose of this challenge? What is the lesson and the blessing of this challenge? It's like asking about the silver lining. Where's the silver lining? Where do we get the blessing out of this? And you can always find a blessing in any challenge. It's always trying to teach you something, and it's usually something about yourself much more often than it is about the world or something else outside of you. And so a gratitude practice is another Buffalo lesson. What do we do? Remember the Oprah making it such a big deal, I think, was it the 80s for the gratitude journal? Because my grandmother actually started one thanks to Oprah. Isn't that amazing? So we need some kind of gratitude practice. It doesn't necessarily have to be that, but really honoring your gifts every day and taking a survey and looking around and seeing what is a true blessing in this moment. You have food, you have shelter. That's another way that I got through some really intense crises in my life was in this moment I am fine. In this moment I have food, shelter, clothing. In this moment I'm okay. I don't know what tomorrow brings, but in this moment I'm okay. And if you can pull into that, especially during a crisis, and recognize that you're not as scattered or unsafe as you may have been perceiving, it's your first knee-jerk reaction versus a conscious response, which is what we're always going for. Again, it just takes practice. But counting your blessings is a huge way of opening up to more blessings and to finding the good in things that maybe don't feel so good. And we all have that. And reframing how you look at or how you define abundance. What is wealth to you? Is it money itself? Is it the choices money affords? Or is it for me, my health and my well-being and my peace of mind is considered my wealth these days. I don't have a lot of cash money, but I have peace of mind in a way that I've never had in my younger years. And so, of course, it's been cultivated. Of course, I've had to work for it and practice. At the same time, I'm settled internally in a way that was chaotic in my 20s and 30s, and learning so much about what my values and priorities really were. And let's not even discuss how America and a monetary system can twist us all up in knots and get us off track. So one of the ways that I help people, certainly in my mentoring, to deal with that is you have to suspend, at least for the sake of today, this moment, the usual inner dialogue. And what I say is, if all your needs were met, all your desires were fulfilled, you had everything you wanted that cost money, you had everything, and a steady income, insurance, you're covered, everything's good, what would you do with your time and energy and whatever resources and money you did have if you didn't have to think about paying the bills? Because often we won't even allow ourselves to think about what we want because our whole life is tied up in paying the bills. So you have to be able to step beyond that somewhere along the line. Okay, maybe you can't do it every day. Maybe life is so demanding and complicated and what have you. Fine. Then I would still say you need to find once a month or once a quarter or once a year, twice a year, whatever it is that works for your system to be balanced. That's always the goal, is balance and integration and being able to know that we are children of the universe, children of the stars, children of God, and it is His good pleasure to give us the kingdom. Like, we are part of this garden. We live in the garden. And that's another reason for creating relationships with the animals, because then you don't feel so much like you're living on the earth. You're living with a living, alive, everything's alive. Everything's alive. And this is what the ancients and the indigenous cultures have always known and always worked with, was the fact that everything's alive. Everything has a spirit and a soul, even an inanimate object. Even rocks are minerals. They're alive. They feed us on very basic levels. Everything has a kind of spirit. So we want to be mindful and respectful of that as well. But we need to get new definitions of wealth and abundance. Money itself is, I believe, an energy. And so often my prayer is for energetic flow, creative flow, and cash flow, but not any one or the other. They're all tied together. The money is the energy, and it's part of our system, and it's part of what we all grew up with. It's certainly in this country. It's something that we have to learn how to get along with. And I'll be honest, I did not get along with money for a long time. And I had a little joke amongst my girlfriends and I that may make you laugh. But I was like, oh, no, I broke up with money, but I'm ready to get back together. I totally broke up with money, but I'm ready to get back together, and I think we can be more balanced this time, and I think we can do it better. And so I'm willing to be part of that system to a certain degree. It is not still ever going to run my life, that's for sure. So thinking in terms of Buffalo specifically and how she is built, she's so huge and massive and amazing, and every single part of her body, inside and out, was useful to the native people. And they deliberately tried to extinguish this species specifically so that the native people would go into a famine and despair and not have what they needed. So it's really another way that we can do a kind of reparations in our prayer work to balance that out. We know that was not right. And we bless Buffalo for coming back the way she has, to the extent that she has. But she can carry a heavy load. We cannot. And we are not built for that kind of range that Buffalo is built for. We want to tap into it. We want to be able to look out in front of us as far as the eye can see and choose the direction we want to go in. But our energy and our input-output, the way that we work in our bodies, is energy in, energy out. So finding your own natural balance. I'm learning I naturally fast pretty much every day. I don't stop to eat 4 meals a day like I should. But I'm learning to eat at least 4 times a day, a little of something, so that my body knows something's coming. Now I'm doing some research. I want to learn how to fast properly because it's something I'm doing anyway. So I might as well do it correctly and get the benefits of actual fasting and helping my system that way. But again, with that energy in, energy out. And now that I'm getting deeper into my spiritual practices and the work that I do, there's certain foods, and certainly alcohol's gone from my hysterectomy and the surgery I had 2 years ago. Sugar, never really a big deal to me, so that's out of here. All the things that can hurt us these days are pretty much fading out of my life organically. So creating space for you to remember your own natural input-output balance, what's good for you. If the load is too heavy, how can you delegate? How can you disperse the energy in a way to lighten up in a certain way? How can you share the load, okay? So you've probably heard me say on some of the calls how, we have to be independent, take care of ourselves in that way, but we don't have to do it alone. That's what the community is for. We're all working on ourselves and walking our path, our individual paths, which are very unique, and at the same time, they're very similar. And we all have to deal with human things. And she would remind us as well to tune into your back, neck, throat, and shoulders. How do you carry life in general? Because that's all the zone of the power of our voice to speak our needs. Back carries everything. It holds our whole system together. And so we want to check in with our bodies when we have these kind of reminders, let's say. And are we cultivating authentic strength and stability that's created over time with practice? That's another thing, is she's super, super strong, and she takes in quality living nutrients. So how are we doing on that front? How is that going? And I think buffalo is just so useful, like I said, for counting the blessings. Once you start to count your blessings, hopefully you're tuning in to your value and worth as well. What is it all worth to you? And how can you renegotiate certain agreements, commitments, or relationships that are imbalanced and maybe sucking you dry and maybe causing you to carry a heavier load than you can, actually handle or even want? So how can we address some of that? And especially this month. This really is the month we would do it. We just happen to be getting together for an introduction to this whole series. But this time next year, we're going to jump back in and play with buffalo again and come up with some new things. And so tonight, I think we're getting ready to do our rattle journey. I would like to open up just for a minute, see if anyone wants to share an animal story or two and how this has helped, or if you have any questions, of course, they're always welcome. And then I have a few little notes here about going into our journey, but let's see what we get after that, So for 2 seconds, let's open it up, because it is kind of later than I thought. I'm sorry, we're having too much fun here. Anyone want to share an animal story?
I would.
Miss Maria.
Hello, my sister. So blessed to be here right now. So the energies have been, really heavy this week, and the animals have really been out to help. And yesterday I was doing some meditating and prayer and walking, and a rabbit crossed my path. And I always know that rabbit is about abundance and fertility and everything, but I wanted to look it up and see what else I would come up with. And I came up with something that I didn't realize and know, but that rabbit also represents warnings about negativity or unseen truth, or people around you that might not have things for their greatest good, because rabbits are so sensitive to vibration, and that's why they can run and scurry so fast. And I also found out that when they are scared and they're trying to protect their young, that they are actually fierce fighters. And we never really think about a rabbit as being a fierce fighter. But if their young is threatened, they bring out their claws and their teeth. And so I got that yesterday, and I thought it was really interesting. And then we had some interesting things happen in our family today, and I had to go into full empress, priestess, warrioress mode today. And I was in the Forest Preserve doing some meditating, and I was called yesterday about shielding myself and my family, because the vibration just wasn't feeling right, and to shield it with salt. And I kind of disregarded it. I listened to it, but I didn't activate it yesterday. Today, I went to go purchase some salt, but not just sea salt. I saw some sea salt that actually had rose essential oils and rose quartz crystal in them, and I was led to buy that, and so I did. And right after I purchased that, I went to my car and I went to my trunk, and when I opened my trunk, a feather a feather was there. Now, I collect feathers and do things all the time, but I hadn't seen that feather in my trunk in a while, and it was just there. I picked it up and I smiled. I'm like, okay, great. Angels are around me. This is great. And then I got this call, and we had all this drama going on in our life. And I had to protect my young today, but I could not do it physically. There was nothing that I could do at the time of the incident. But instead of my old self from a few years ago that might have either freaked out or cried or fell out or whatever, universe welled up in me to go into full priestess mode. I went to that tree. I took that pink salt. I called some other Reiki masters that I knew, and they started surrounding me and my family with a bubble of pink light. We are in the season of Mary Magdalene, Mother Mary, the divine feminine pink light right now. So I thought it was interesting that the salt that I got contained all those elements. So I made this huge circle around this tree, and I stood in the middle, and then Spirit guided me to start doing shaman shaking and dancing and stomping around the tree. As I was doing that, one of my Reiki master friends called me, and she went into prayer with me, and my phone was on speaker, and I'm in the middle of a public forest preserve, but nobody was there. My eyes were closed the majority of the time, and right at the end, when I was in full release, full surrender, full crying and chanting and everything, I opened my eyes, and a humongous hawk was hovering over my head, not just over the tree, over my head, low to me. It made 3 circles around me and the tree, and it flew away. And then as it flew away, the sun burst out of the clouds, because I'm in Chicago, and today it was cold and rainy and dark all day long. And right at that moment, I had such a sense of strength and peace. And I knew all the ancestors were there. I go to this particular forest preserve all the time and pray. And there are a couple of hawks there that I watch. I call them my hawks. I know they're my spirit guides. When I took the name of Sister Shaman, I was meditating in the forest preserve, and I was like, what should my name be, universe? And Sister Shaman came in my mind. As soon as Sister Shaman came in my mind, the hawk flew by and made its lovely hawk sound. Today, hawk came again, and he hovered so slowly that I knew specifically that it was my spirit guide blessing me, praying over me, and letting me know, we got your back. We got your back. And it just made me so strong. And I stayed there. I made myself stay there for 2 hours instead of worrying and trying to fix things in the normal 3D the way people would. And then when I felt peace, that's when I left. When I left, I got the call, and the situation was resolved. And this is how I know that there is a God goddess.
Thank you, dear. That's a powerful story. Oh, my God. That was 3 powerful stories in one. Thank you. That's exactly what I mean, you guys, is we all have these experiences, and we can take them with a grain of salt and not pay it any attention, but then eventually Spirit gets our attention one way or another. So does anyone else want to be brave? Thank you, Maria. Thank you, darling.
Thank you, sisters.
Thank you.
Aloha, Kelly. It's Elder Ray.
Hey, darling. What you got?
Hi. Well, I just wanted to say thank you for sharing your Al story with us, and because Al has been very important to me over here in Hawaii. That showed up when I came here, the white owl, actually. And I know, and in Hawaiian it's called the pueo, P-U, Akino-E-O, the pueo. And 3 times this white owl has shown up to me. And the challenge that I was getting from that was how I was responding to this, because I didn't know why this owl was coming to me. And then all of a sudden it came through. You are a light in the darkness, and you're protected.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah. And it was so beautiful because it was really that knowingness that over here they call your higher self, or whatever, your higher power, your Amakua, that was connecting. The owl was seeing in the darkness, the light of connecting me with my higher self when I came to Hawaii to work with the other animals over here. Yeah. So thank you for sharing your story about the owl too, because it's very important for me.
Well,
yeah.
Yes, that reminds me, too. I forgot another good one. Okay, for about 90 days, I communed with a black raven that had one white tail feather. And if any of you knew me on Facebook for the 5 minutes I was there, my icon or whatever, my graphic, was that bird. It was that bird, and it was so amazing. And so I did a little digging, and I found an old Inuit story. The Eskimos in Alaska, they said that once one white tail feather is cracking the darkness, and that as it turns completely white, you are liberated, redeemed, what have you, like free. And then there is something I literally just read today, and I don't know how or why, I can't even tell you what it was, that crossed my path talking about white animals specifically and how they were the sign to Native people that peace is returning. And so there's more white animals showing up these days that are showing us that we have, and I've said this about my astrology, I think we've tipped the scales in favor of healing and wholeness, but it is going to be a process for us to be able to see it. But, Elder Ray, that was great.
Can I share you another little story? I actually went to South Dakota to see the white buffalo that was born, Rainbow Spirit, several years ago, and got to be in the presence with the mother and the baby of the white buffalo. Yeah. And it was beautiful.
Incredible.
Yeah.
That's huge, too. And I've been, of course, with the buffalo, reading all about them, and they're the most special one in their whole culture. That's amazing.
And I'd like to give another one of the whale over here.
Yes.
Because the whale is so important to us because it's old knowledge. And that the whales migrate here from, they come here and migrate here through the spheres of the water, trying to teach us that we also swim in the spheres of the universe. And that they have old knowledge for us, but they also are teaching us balance because the male whale swims with the female all the way over here. So she is balancing our male and female energy out. And she's never afraid because he's always there because she knows that he swims with his soul in the soul essence. Yeah. So the whale is very important to us over here. And the dolphin is too, because the dolphin is about playfulness and joy.
Yes. Yeah. And the dolphin, I've heard, is also called the wolf of the sea. So I like that because I really do have a kinship with the dolphins here. And we can't get Maria started or we'll be talking about dolphins all night. But I love you guys. And I'm so grateful, Elder Ray. Thank you for sharing. I don't want to – mahalo. Thank you. Anyone else? Because I don't want to discourage anyone from sharing because we hardly ever get to have this much fun, but I know it's late on the East Coast. I'm totally fine. So any last stories that we want to share about the blessing of animals in our lives? Because those who hear this on the back end are just going to love it. So I hope I have your permission to share your stories, ladies. Might want to send me a little note. Thank you. Okay. You sure, Lindsay? No creatures crawling around that new building that's about to come to life, validating your vision? I bet there are. But I thank you, loves. And let's go into a quick, maybe 7-8 minute journey. And I just want to put on the table here, let me mute us back just for the recording's sake. Hold on, guys. So as we go in tonight, just sort of relax. Ask for any guidance and support that you know you need. It's already on your heart or on your mind at this time. And you can ask about clearing a blockage or the proper medicine for you to open up to. How can you prepare for more energetic flow, creative flow, and cash flow in your life? Because remember, Buffalo reminds us of the abundance and how everything we need is already here. None of us, I don't think, on this call or listening on the back end, have goals for anything that isn't already here. Even if it's a creative thing like writing a book that really isn't already here, but publishing is. And we can do this, and we can connect to our goals, and that flow is what we're going for. Ask about the long-term effects if you are opening up to more. Okay, so for example, I love talking to small groups. Certainly in person, I like to limit it to about 13. The goddess number seems to work for me. But if I were to talk to a group, like when I was doing a lot of stuff with Hay House and had to stand up in front of 500 people, that's a whole different deal. That's a different vibration. That's a different level. It's a whole different thing. So you want to ask, even when we're asking for more abundance or more wealth or what have you, make sure that's really what you want. And that's why a lot of times we want to leave our prayers to this or something better. We want to say our piece. We want to invite what it is we're calling into our lives, but we want to allow Spirit some room to work. And often Spirit knows some things we don't know. And so we want to say, we want this, but if you have something better, I trust my higher self, Spirit, God, Source, whatever you want to call it. You can trust that, but maybe ask about the long-term effects of more. You know, a lot of times more money is more things to manage. Ask maybe how you can simplify your life so that you can accommodate an increased flow. That's what I'm doing. I'm really clearing the decks because I want to be mobile and more fluid. And maybe ask for that first step forward, whatever that may be for you. So let's take a deep breath. Ooh, that was a lot for everyone. And get comfortable. Maybe put your hands on your heart and breathe as if you're breathing through and from your heart. Feel that expansion. Call up into in your body, mind, and spirit the most joyful memory you can conceive of in this moment, the most joyful vibration you can feel. I usually picture an 18-month-old baby frolicking on the beach. They are so happy, and they remember at that age so much that they cannot articulate, but they demonstrate that joy of being in a body, of being on earth, of being here now. We want to call that in. Make that connection above, below, and at the heart. Continue to breathe and make your way to your happy place in nature, wherever that may be. It may be the ocean, maybe lakes, rivers, sweet water, salt water, mountains, cliffs, rocks, the redwoods, anywhere in pristine nature, preferably someplace you're familiar with and have been so that you can come and go without thinking too hard. Take some deep breaths. You may have your own animal or ancestral guide. I've told you about my ruby red wolf as my totem guide. She's always with me at the portal. And as we move through into pristine nature, no humans, no buildings, no industry, nothing but nature, comfortable, perfect temperature, get acclimated, smell the smells, taste the tastes, feel the feels, listen, what do you hear? Notice what's around you. Feel the vibration. And open to receive a message, either from a guide you already know, or perhaps a new guide will show up today. You can invite a symbol or a word or a picture, something you can remember, something you can bring back with you that you can work with going forward. Buffalo is reminding us of all that we need, desire, and deserve is available. We need but get in alignment and create a channel to it, create a path to it. We are ready. Perhaps snake will help you shed a skin. Raven, connect you to your own magic. All the animals have a special gift. Whale, take you back to the long line of ancestors. And here we go. Start making your way back. That was your call back. Following the same path back to the portal where your animal guide is waiting to bring you back to ordinary reality. And you want to jot down, if you have a notebook and a pen, to write down anything you want to remember. I always forget to say this, but before you leave, you should always make an offering of gratitude, of course. If you don't have out in nature any cornmeal or lavender or tobacco or things to make offerings like that, you can use a seashell or a rock or a lock of your hair as part of your DNA as an offering when you have nothing else. There's always a way to make an offering of gratitude to the invisible support that always surrounds us. So, anyone is welcome to share what might have come through on the journey. There we go. Otherwise, I could just say thank you and be ever so grateful that you all shared this time with me. But does anyone want to share their journey? What animal showed up? What message they got? Piece of medicine or a symbol? Often we get similar animals. One night we all got Black Panther separately in completely different parts of the world. Sometimes your sharing will validate something for someone else. It's really why we like to do that in the circle when we can. And at the same time, this is a space I want you to always feel like you can receive. Someone talking?
I got Black Panther again. This is the third time in a row, and the hawk came again. And what I got was look through the situation to see things from a higher, different perspective with the hawk. And with Black Panther, that the ancestors are guiding us, and that everything that is happening right now is an initiation because we chose to be here to transmute this. 7 generations past, 7 generations forward. So no matter what it looks like, know that we are doing fine and we are covered.
Thank you, God. Thank you, Maria, for sharing. Okay. Well, we're going to wrap it up. I am so grateful. Thank you, everyone. I will be getting out this audio, and I will actually send you a couple of animals. I'll pull some cards and see what messages want to come through me for you. But thank you, everyone, for being with me. I am eternally grateful, and I hope you'll join us next month for the ancestors, because that is the biggie. And we're going to have a lot of fun on that one, too. So reach out if you have any afterthoughts or want to talk to me directly. And thank you, everyone. And everyone who signed up for the Buffalo Reset, I am very grateful for you all as well. We're going to have a fantastic week. And like I said, we'll do this every month. So if you can't be with us this month, maybe next month. And I will talk to you soon. Thank you, everyone. Much love and deep gratitude.